Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the upcoming US presidential elections. As we all know that now Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, second term of President Donald Trump. This is going to be, I think, one of the most interesting elections now. Even in the previous election when Donald Trump was elected and he was contesting against the former First Lady Hillary Clinton and the former Secretary of State as well. And most people thought that since Barack Obama ended up becoming the first black American president, so there is a very high probability that the lady can become the next president. But interestingly, that did not happen, and interestingly, Mr. Donald Trump became the president of the United States of America. Now, during the next election, since Joe Biden, the former vice president of Mr. Barack Obama this time is competing, and let's see what happens. But a lot of people believe, actually the surveys, they tell us that the current tilt of the American public is towards Mr. Joe Biden, not towards Donald Trump. But these are just statistics. God knows what is going to happen. There are various ways to, in fact, be a part of the election campaign, the kind of money you're spending, the areas which you're targeting, the poor, or primarily those who are high taxpayers, what sort of relief will they get? Then obviously a lot of people believe that the Jewish lobby is playing a very vital role ever since America came into being, or rather post Second World War, I would say, and they have a very strong hold in the decision-making process in the United States of America. Now, that is going to be something very interesting. But when we look at the American election, obviously we have a different prism. We have a different lens to look at the election. Since Pakistan is a country which has been a very, I would say, a long ally of the Americans, and we have been able to, in fact, do a lot for them. But in return, still, there is a lot of confusion that prevails. And on top of that, last time the Russians were blamed for meddling in the US election. This time, the Americans are blaming the Chinese. So let's see what happens. But anyway, to talk about this, we have with us in our studio. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Dr. Professor Rifat Hussain Saab, Senior Strategic Analyst. And Dr. Saab is an IR expert as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab.
Thank you so much.
And we will be talking to Ahmed Qureshi Saab, Senior Journalist, Writer, Columnist, who is going to join us on Skype. Thank you very much, Ahmed Qureshi, for your time as well. And we'll also be talking to Begum Abida Hussain Saiba, the former ambassador and the former minister of Pakistan. And she is also going to give her comments on the telephone. But let me start off from you, Dr. Rifat Hussain Saab. Now,
Ji, please.
The American election, sir. The more you read about it, the more confused you get. This is what exactly my thinking is, sir. The statistics, they show that the presidential candidate, Mr. Joe Biden, is doing quite a lot. But at the same time, when you look at the Midwest and otherwise, Trump seems to be doing pretty okay, and there seems to be no concern when we hear about his statements. Now, currently, sir, last time also everybody thought that Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president. But interestingly, though it was a very close contest, but still she ended up losing. What do you expect this time, sir? What different is going to happen regarding the Hispanic votes, the black votes post the Black Lives Matter issue, coronavirus handling? That has also become something of prime concern that has been used as a statement against Donald Trump. Plus his losses on so many frontiers. Your take, sir.
Well, Faisal, there are certain things or certain factors which make this upcoming election unique in the American history. For example, this is the first election for a very, very long time which is occurring in the background of America being in turmoil. Economically, politically, socially, the American polity, American political system is sharply divided. That's one thing, and largely because of the impact of the coronavirus. So the coronavirus factor is going to play a critical role in the number of people who will come out and vote for the other party. That's one factor. And the second is that this is for the first time in American history, ever since they introduced the presidential debate system, that because of the coronavirus issue, those presidential debates have not been held. So people have no way of directly finding out as to what the party platform is going to be. So, and the third factor is the swing vote. which includes the vote of the youth. It also includes the vote of those people, Hispanic communities or the non-white American communities, and particularly, and that's a crucial point, is the attitude of the white supremacists who are defining the base of President Trump. These are people who do not have a college degree, but they are very passionately attached to the party platform, and they are the personal supporters of President Trump. So the question is that how much erosion has occurred as a result of all the factors that I mentioned in the base support of President Trump. Now, if President
So
Trump,
these white people primarily, I mean, they made the difference in the previous election also.
Yes.
But do you believe that these people, they have this ideological difference with the Democrats? What exactly is in fact persuading them to vote for Donald Trump once again?
Basically, President Trump's strategy is that he has been able to exploit the anxieties felt by most of the Americans with regard to their jobs, with regard to their unemployment figures, which are going through the roof, and he has been able to mobilize these people in support of his agenda, that if you put the Democrats in power, then we are going to there is going to be a future trouble for the American economy, because they are going to introduce socialist measures, even though the Democratic Party platform has denied that they would like to fix the economy, and the mismanagement of the economy by President Trump, because there are 60 million people who have filed for employment benefits over the past 4 months. That is the highest unemployment figure in the
And Dr. Saab, that is primarily due to
American
COVID
history.
and because of shutting down of various businesses, and obviously that is going to have a lot of effect on common man. But let me take another point to Ahmed Qureshi Saab. Ahmed Saab, when you hear Mr. Joe Biden, he says that the US election as a fight for the nation's soul, and they all believe that Donald Trump has ruined the American democratic culture also, unfortunately. Your take, sir?
Well, obviously, Faisal, Joe Biden has a very tough job, and the Democratic Party has a very tough job defeating Donald Trump. Trump is a very different type of politician. He was able to spring up surprises. He managed to defeat the traditional American political system and win elections. He managed to defeat one of the, I would say, the face, one of the main politicians who are considered to be insiders of the American political establishment. And of course, I'm referring to Hillary Clinton. And he managed to defeat her and defeat that whole political system, which is obviously very complicated political system in the US. So he's a master of surprises. He managed to pull through very difficult situations that normally politicians cannot pull through. So he's a master of surprises. It's a tough job for Democratic Party, for Joe Biden. And I think even within the Republican Party, they do not have anyone who can pull the Republican Party and take it forward the way Trump can. And you can see how, when you follow the statements of key politicians within the Democratic Party, within the campaign of Joe Biden, you can see that their entire focus is really on defeating this one person, because he's so formidable. Can he then pull it in this re-election in the midterms? We'll see. But again, he's a master of surprises. He's a tough candidate. It's a huge thing. And if Donald Trump is defeated, you can bet that it will be celebrated as if the Democratic Party has defeated something that was impossible. So that tells you how tough, how difficult, how formidable Donald Trump is.
Ahmed, now that is pretty much understandable, but at the same time, when you look at the American election from Pakistani perspective, what do you see happening? I mean, obviously, we have it. I mean, to me, honestly speaking, whether there is a Democratic president or a Republican president, it doesn't make any difference. Their policy is very much the same towards the region, and especially towards Pakistan. But do you see the continuity of the current policies if Trump wins? And what if he doesn't? Do you see a U-turn seen by the Americans?
Faisal, obviously, it's a given. Like every other country, Pakistan will work with whatever government is there in Washington, obviously, like any other country. But uh, let's also recall that during President Obama's 8 years, we've had the most difficult relations with the United States. And things looked certainly promising when President Trump was initially elected. But then, of course, there were some ups and some downs in the middle, and then we managed to now strike to reach a very good understanding and a very good compromise. What I recall of President Obama's administration, where Joe Biden, of course, was the vice president, is that President Obama probably will be remembered as the worst period for Pakistani-American relations, and there, of course, there's a lot of we can go on explaining that how President Obama actually did not miss any opportunity to sort of humiliate Pakistan and offend Pakistan in multiple ways. He traveled to this region a couple of times to Kabul, a couple of times to New Delhi, always skipped Pakistan, and so forth. There's a whole long list of grievances. But the point is, right now, the sort of understand, and of course, let's not also forget the whole history of initially under Obama administration, the late Bush administration, and the Obama administration, we had issues with the very deep American.
All right. Now, Dr. Saab, when you talk about the US elections, one is the perspective which is from the other side of the world. If you remember, sir, when Donald Trump took charge as a president for 3.5, 4 years ago, there were basic global changes and difference of opinion. Whether you talk about the relationship between USA and Mexico, if you remember, Mexican president was supposed to visit, and then this issue of the wall between the two countries started, and eventually that was postponed. And then regarding NAFTA, regarding NATO, regarding China, policy regarding Middle East, policy regarding Pakistan and Afghanistan, policy regarding South Asia in particular. I mean, we saw, how can we forget the Iran deal? There was so much going on, sir, that there was so many U-turns, obviously. Wherever the American interest had some sort of conflict, they just reversed everything. Now it seems that the international issues, they are the back burner, and currently the domestic issues, whether you talk about the rights of the black, or you talk about the new modern patterns of voting, or you talk about, for that matter, sir, as you earlier mentioned, the economic issues, the jobs creation. I mean, it went up initially, but it went down. So many people have been unemployed. So whosoever comes into the power, sir, at some stage is going to face the music. And if Trump comes, it will not be an easy journey for him to go for that long. I mean, this man was impeached, though he survived, but I think three of them totally impeached so far. So, I mean, looking at the record, looking at the history, it seems that there's going to be a lot of rocky road ahead for him.
Well, I think as we anticipate the future of these American elections, which in itself is a hazardous exercise, but I would say three things. One, there is an old saying about the American politics, that in the American politics, particularly in the context of the American electoral politics, it is the local conditions which define a constituency's preferences when people go out and vote. So, the people who will be electing these voters, who will be electing these candidates, they are going to vote on the basis of the local elections and the local context. So, local conditions are going to be very important. I do not think that global issues, which are the main concerns of the White House presidency, are going to impact very hugely, except for the in the sense that they are going to interact with the local context and define the American electoral college's preferences. The second thing is also very important. It is not the number of the who gets the highest popular percentage, but it is a magic figure of 270 electoral college votes, and which means that we have to look at for example, if Joe Biden carries the California state where his vice president candidate Kamala Harris hails from. She is a former Attorney General of California, and because of her youthful legacy, because she is a person of the color, and because she is sending out vibes. So if they can,
And she can also influence the female voters.
yeah, and then which means that if the 55 votes, which is a huge vote in the context of the 270 electoral college votes.
That's correct, sir.
Which means that whoever wins these big votes, big states. In terms of the electoral college votes, will carry the White House. Number one. Number two is that previously, when Trump won his first term, he won most of those states. He won from most of those states which had traditionally been voting for the Democrats. So the question is that would his previous support by winning those states, for example, Florida, Louisiana, Philadelphia, etc., will his vote be
Whether the same trend will prevail or not. I mean, that is something very important.
And there are many people who are saying that these have become actually swing votes because one is not sure how the people in those battle ground states are going to vote. And the third factor, which I think is going to be very, very important, is the message of reassurance, which people may not like Trump anymore. They may like to vote against him. But on the day of the voting, are those people going to be just because they do not like Trump? Are they going to come out and in support of the alternative
I think
candidates?
the percentage of people who will come out to vote, I mean, that is also going to play a very, very important role. And plus on top, Dr. Saab, as we all know, there is a very interesting and famous movie, Wag the Dog.
Yes.
That's about
yes.
that movie was based on the second election campaign of a president. An old shoe is better than the new one. So let's see whether this old shoe is good enough to continue for another 4 years or they need replacement. We'll just take a short break here. You stay with us, we'll take a break, and after the break, we'll return and we'll continue our discussion. Welcome back after the break. Now, Dr. Saab, a quick comment and then I'll go to Ahmed Qureshi. And that comment, basically I want regarding the Middle East situation, sir. If you remember when Donald Trump took charge as the president, his first visit was to Saudi Arabia. And right from there, sir, he went to Israel. And then we all started hearing about the major role of Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, who eventually became his advisor also. Now, sir, interestingly, when you look at the kind of development in the region, Pompeo is going to be there in UAE as well as in Israel. And a lot of Americans do believe that I think Trump is the architect, or maybe his son-in-law, basically primarily the same, that they are the architects of the new Middle East peace plan. If you remember the deal of the century,
yes.
And now they talk about the current situation that, well, this is going to be the best possible future we can actually think of in the Middle East. Do you think, sir, this is going to backfire, or this is going to be considered as a great achievement of the current regime of the US, sir?
Well, I think it's very interesting that there is a bipartisan consensus within the US administration, which means that both parties basically agree, and neither of the parties has, particularly a Democrat, they have not opposed a deal, which I'm essentially talking about the deal which was brokered by the White House, which involves the normalization of relationship between Israel and the UAE. However, the question of the Palestinian rights and the question of the rights of the Palestinian to have their own homeland is something which
Sir, this own homeland or primarily to support the two-state theory, sir?
No, but the two-state solution, which essentially means that the areas which are currently occupied by Israel, they have to be vacated, which is essentially the West Bank of Jordan and the Gaza Strip. So these areas, and under the Kushner plan, the Netanyahu government had announced its plan that they are going to permanently annex this these areas and make them part of the new Israeli territory. So, which means that they had practically killed the.
So the expansion plan is there and will remain. Sir, if you allow me, we've been joined in by Begum Abda Hussain Sahibas.
Yes,
and
please
we
go
would
ahead.
also like to have her comments on the developing situation in the Middle East as well as in the US. Assalamu alaikum ji. Begum Abda Hussain Sahiba, can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Hello? Hello? We will just ma'am, call you back. I think there's some technical problem. But let me move on to Ahmed sir and let us also engage and ask him regarding this current development. Ahmed, the primary difference which we have witnessed, that if Obama was in power or maybe the same continuity was there, things would have been not much different. When you talk about the kind of commitments even Obama made in 2007-8, he did talk about closing down Guantanamo Bay. He couldn't do that. He did speak about the Kashmir issue, couldn't do much about it. He also spoke about the Iran deal, which he brokered, but anyway, whatever is happening, we all know. You talk about the Middle East peace plan, or especially the development in the Palestinian area. I mean, much did not happen. And then Trump came in. We were not expecting much from him, but at least he spoke to our prime minister and showed him that he can play the role of a moderator regarding the Kashmir issue, or for that matter, the kind of developments which we have witnessed in Afghanistan, pretty encouraging, and so forth. Let's analyze those 2-3 areas, Ahmed.
Exactly, Faisal. These are very key and very important areas. And I personally am very excited about the fact that President Trump allowed the office of the US presidency to be used as a platform to multiply the message or the debate or spark the debate over Kashmir. And this was probably the first president who spoke in those terms on Kashmir. It's not a big deal. It's not enough. It will not lead to the resolution of the conflict. And certainly it's not enough from our side, from the Pakistani side. But it's a very important step forward. And I think we all recall that when he initially spoke about Kashmir, there was a lot of pushback and resistance from the American foreign policy community. They thought that India would be antagonized, would be humiliated by this talk of Kashmir. And we've seen subsequently how the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi tried to sort of court the Trump administration with a rally in Houston and holding of hands and other things in order to sort of convince the Trump White House to seize any talk of Kashmir. But we've seen how Prime Minister Imran Khan also engaged President Trump, and how President Trump at least continued to say that this is an international dispute, that this is not an internal matter of India, that the US president is talking about it. And of course, it's important when an American president speaks about this conflict, which was forgotten for about 5 or 6 decades. It really did add more visibility to this issue, to Kashmir internationally. So that I'm personally excited about this. Obviously, it's a huge challenge for us and also for the Trump White House, for the US government, how to move forward on Kashmir. But I do notice here that there has been also a shift in the American media on the US media's narrative on India and the US media's narrative on Kashmir. And it has moved forward. And many of the things that Pakistan used to say, and we used to be alone in saying those things about India and about Kashmir, we see a lot of echo in the American media, in the mainstream media, on India, on the human rights violations within India, the minorities, the treatment of Muslims and Christians, and so forth, and the Indian human rights violations in Kashmir. So there has been a move forward and a shift in the American media with regards to these two issues, India and Kashmir. Now, how to take this forward for Pakistan, or how the White House can take this forward, it's a huge challenge. Obviously, it's a different topic. That's a different topic. But there have been some good things that came out of this Trump administration as far as Pakistan is concerned. I also recall that there was a lot of pressure and lobbying to add Pakistan to the list of travel ban. The countries, I think 6 or 7 countries, I think most of them were
We
Muslim
were not
countries.
included in that, I remember, yes.
Yes, Trump refused to include that, and there was a lot of pressure from the Indian lobby, maybe from others as well, to include Pakistan. But Trump administration, despite the fact that at that time we
All
did
right.
not have the best of relations,
All right,
he did
I'll
not.
just get back to you, Ahmed. We have been joined in by Begum Abida Hussain Sahiba, the former ambassador of Pakistan in the US. Assalamu alaikum ji. Hello. Ma'am, can you hear me clearly, ji? Hello. I think there is something wrong with the connection. I guess most likely they'll be calling you back, ma'am. Now, another very important factor, Ahmed, that is about the ongoing, whether you call it the trade war or maybe the Cold War or whatever you may call it, between China and the US, the two major powers now. You all know that what's happening in the South China Sea. We all know the kind of support the Americans are given to the Indians and the current Indo-Pacific Pact and all. I mean, this region was very stable when you talk about the Far East. But now things are getting really different because everybody is meddling into the affairs of others, whether you talk about the Taiwan issue or the Hong Kong issue or maybe the South China Seas dispute. So on and so forth. And on top, the OBOR or the CPEC project. I mean, we have been getting pressure from left, right, and center regarding that. So when China is really coming up as the next superpower, Americans or the American administration, maybe, or the White House, and there is also a disconnect between the White House and the Pentagon in that, different statements, and again, the issue regarding the media, the way they are actually analyzed. How do you see that part? Ahmed Qureshi.
Pressure on with regards to CPEC, Faisal, was actually coming from the Kulbushan Yadav network, and that has been neutralized. So I would say, and I would claim very confidently that the biggest pressure that we had with regards to CPEC actually was from this network, and which was designed to scuttle this project, and we neutralized it, and we put it behind us. So I don't think we have a major threat right now to CPEC from anyone. And I think as a journalist, and we've all been, Faisal, you and I, we've been covering this story, and speaking to American diplomats and Chinese diplomats, I think everybody tries to posture and tries to use and maybe oftentimes apply some pressure or not. But generally speaking, the Americans and the Chinese, with regards to Pakistan, I think both countries understand that Pakistan is a very good conduit, and a very good channel for both countries. And I think we are, just yesterday I was reading that our Navy, the Pakistan Navy, is the only probably Navy in the world which has interoperability with the Chinese Navy and with the US Navy. We have equipment from both countries. We have training from both countries. We have advisors and colleagues and military officers from both countries. And we are the only Navy. And we have huge role within the American operations in the Gulf and in the Arabian Sea with the US Fifth Fleet. And at the same time, we are very, very close to China as well. So we have this very unique position. Pakistan is lucky, actually. And there was initially a lot of worry that we might be crushed between these two elephants. But actually, Pakistan has done a very, very good job maintaining relationship with both countries. And I think both Beijing and Washington understand that Pakistan has a role, and we can actually help these two countries communicate. We bring certainly they don't need us to communicate, but Pakistan did play historically a role between these two countries and can continue to play that, although we need to be, of course, obviously watching out for any worsening of relations between China and the United States. So far, it remains limited to the trade war, luckily. And though these two countries, of course, are heavily dependent economically on each other, let's see how they disengage, because we're beginning to see talk right now about disengagement commercially and economically. Although it's still a talk, not much action really has happened yet. We still see US companies operating in China and vice versa. although the U.S. government and of course Trump administration is trying to put some restrictions. But the point is, Pakistan is doing very well, and I think we can manage on our own, maintaining relations with these two countries.
All right, sir. The balance, to create that kind of a balance, which Pakistan has always been under tremendous challenges, sir, whether it is regarding Saudi Arabia and Iran, or whether regarding other countries. Again, another challenge, how to balance out these two. And Pakistani Prime Minister was very, very clear on one issue, and that is that the future of Pakistan is 100% associated with China. Whether you talk about CPEC or you talk about the investments carried out by the Chinese in Pakistan, or the kind of long-term vision and plan these both countries have. But sir, creating that balance, I think that is going to be a challenge for Pakistan.
Well, I think everything that Ahmed Qureshi has said about the current emerging global trends is true, but the question is, when we see these trends, how would they play out in the context of the American domestic politics? As I said earlier, and I would like to repeat my point, that the American electoral dynamics in the context of the upcoming elections will be defined by domestic issues and global considerations, or the global political issues, geopolitical global.
But primarily, Dr. Saab, when we talk about the geopolitical issues, in USA people hardly just only watch Fox News. They have no clue, honestly, what's happening around them, outside United States.
No, that's exactly my point. So these global issues which are important in their own right, which are important from Pakistan's perspective, have a very little resonance with the American voter. And American voter is more concerned about his employment, about where his social security is going to come from, where his health insurance is going to come from, and where his next meal is going to come from. It's astounding that when you have the 60 million American people who have gone out of the job during the last 6 months because of Trump administration's mismanagement, and despite the fact that they have devoted roughly about $3 trillion to manage, and people are looking at how come America is technologically most advanced country, but they were unable to tackle the COVID impact. So these the COVID's impact is going to play on the psyche of the American voters, and that's going to be a very decisive factor. And the people, I think, if Democrats win the White House in November, it will be not because they are trying to offer something very important to the American in terms of the socio-economic agenda, but they are going to win largely because of the devastation, economic devastation wrought by the COVID 2019 in terms of these astounding figures, unemployment figures, and the economic devastation. So what I am saying is that the magic number of 270 electoral college votes will be decided on the basis of the local factors. And global scenarios, even though they are important, the Trump administration has deployed the China threat theory, that China is the emerging future power, and we need to contain them, and we would like to develop much stronger relationship with India to counterbalance China. But in the calculations of the American voters, these issues are not going to be very important. So foreign policy issues, though those issues are important from the perspective of the rest of the world, but those are not going to be the decisive factors in determining the future electoral choices.
But there is another factor, sir, which is very important, and that is about the trend of voting. Now, I was reading this article, and it says that people in the United States of America, especially those who are voting for the Republicans, I mean, if you look at it, it says that the percentage, 53 versus 24. So more people are interested in voting for them online as compared to half of what the Republicans are looking at. So Democrats.
Well, President Trump has made number of statements which give an indication that he is going to be a bad loser. In case he loses the election, he is going to contest this, and there have been statements from former Secretary of State and the former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, that we may have to call on the American military to make him leave the White House in case he loses the election. So there are people who are very much apprehensive that
You believe that if he loses it, he won't vacate White House?
no, he won't vacate out White House and would like to take the create so much controversy that get the American Supreme Court involved in delivering a verdict or validating the verdict whether the elections have been fair or free. So these are going to be ugly elections, and there's going to be tremendous fight because there's a lot at
So we're going to
stake
witness a lot of war on words, right, sir? Anyway, Dr. Saab, thank you very much. Ahmed Qureshi Saab, last closing comments from you, sir.
Well, very quickly, Faisal, I think it's a very interesting time. And I think as far as the US elections are concerned, my only concern is that when Trump was being elected, when the last election cycle was taking place, most of us in Pakistan actually got the results wrong. And one of the key, and everybody did, not just us, everybody in the world actually got it wrong. But one of the worrying things is that the U.S. remains a very influential superpower, and the next country to challenge the U.S. has a lot of work to do, and we need to have a much better engagement with the key players in American politics to safeguard Pakistan's interests. And I think we're doing that. We have an excellent ambassador right now in Washington, D.C. We're engaging everybody, and it's a good thing we're doing that. We should have done it earlier, but better late than never. And I think we need to be focusing on that while, of course, protecting also our interests in other places all over the world. So I think we're also going in a good direction.
All right. Thank you very much, Ahmed Qureshi. And that's all we have for this. I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.